Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. Finally, after people have been asking me about this for a long time, I did get around to testing this thing. This is the Azuma. A type, was it B-65? So a Super A-type battle cruiser. What were these things? Well, the Japanese had a problem. The Japanese had many problems, but one of them was that the Americans had a bigger fleet than them. And according to treaties, they couldn't really do an awful lot about it in terms of tonnage. They could, cheat a little bit. But you couldn't just build a very large fleet and then keep half of it hidden or something. So the Japanese doctrine, especially also after Tsushima, has always been quality over quantity. Hasn't really quite worked out, but the idea was that instead of having two smaller battleships, because the Japanese were keenly aware that the Americans had a certain limitation imposed by the Panama Canal on how big they could make their ships, they said, okay, let's just make them bigger. But then how would you deal with a whole battle group? Because a battle group doesn't just have battleships, it also has a screening force of cruisers, destroyers, and all other kind of things. So the idea here was to go and say, well, first of all, our own light forces, so our cruisers and destroyers, are going to start with a night engagement because we're better at night fighting than the Americans, which is true, as the Americans found out their very hard way of losing a lot of men and ships in certain areas in the beginning. So the idea was, our own screening force will defeat the enemy screen and then drop a lot of torpedoes on the enemy battle lines and then retreat. And in the next morning, the heavy forces will swoop in and finish off what's left. And that's how we're going to defeat a numerically superior battle group in the Pacific. The Americans heard that the Japanese were planning to do a Super Type A cruiser. Type A's would have been the heavy cruiser lines. And they were planning to. They were thinking of building a larger cruiser to assist with, basically a successor to the Congos, a battle cruiser if you want, to assist with taking out enemy cruiser screens and to get to the battle line, which has triggered the Americans to build the Alaska class, which in return the Japanese have heard of and then figured, okay, we need something to also deal with these, and confirmation, yes, we need these battle cruiser things. And that's where this sort of type came up. But unlike the Alaska class, these things have never been built, which kind of made the Americans feel a little bit silly once they actually had the Alaska and then had no idea what to do with them. But that's a story for another day. Anyway, that's where the whole design B-65 type, was it a Super Type A class of battle cruisers, super heavy cruisers, whatever you want to call it, came from. Which brings us to the Azuma. So, in fact, we actually have two of these. We have the Azuma at tier 9 and the Yoshino at tier 10. But first of all, let's compare, once that comes up, the Azuma to the Ibuki, to the tier 9 heavy cruiser, so the non-super version of it. First thing that stands out is that the Azuma gets both precise aim and rapid reload. But she doesn't get very good skills, just the base version of it. And she does get a sonar. The Azuma has more hit points than an Ibuki. It's also quite large. This thing is actually pretty massive. The armor, however, is, as you normally find on these sort of battle cruiser, super cruiser things, not the best. She is reasonably maneuverable, and she has 9 310mm guns. In that regard, she's actually a little bit like the French battle cruiser thingies that have been coming out recently. These guns have a pretty good range, and on paper at least, do a very decent amount of damage. The problem is in the detail, because as is typical for Japanese cruiser caliber guns, the armor-piercing penetration in these guns is very, very lackluster. So much so, in fact, that you're often better off shooting armor-piercing at destroyers, at least at anything but point-blank range because they're not going to over-penetrate. And high explosive at all the rest. The problem, though, here comes then that, while the high explosive is good, you also have a 13-second reload on it. Which, by the way, is much better than the garbage that the French are getting. Plus, you've got a rapid reload, so it's workable. The bigger problem comes further down the road. You get auto-secondaries, which is cute, but absolutely useless. Because if you find yourself in range, or if you find yourself in a position that your auto-secondaries have range on enemy ships, you've done something extremely badly. These are completely useless. These are, however, dual-purpose guns, so we should be seeing a little bit of AA. What you're, however, going to notice, and this is where the big problem comes in, is that the Azuma does not get any torpedoes, which is correct. The design B-65 were not supposed to be having torpedoes. These were supposed to be battle cruisers. These were supposed to be things that use big guns to take out enemy cruiser screens. That's a little bit of a problem in game, though. The AA is good, but it's okay. But without a defensive AA at tier 9 is not going to do an awful lot by itself. And obviously the concealment is relatively poor for a ship that size, despite the fact of it being Japanese. So how does the Azuma at tier 9 and the Yoshino at tier 10 differ? Well, they are both getting the same skill set. I mean, the Yoshino gets an additional precise aim, but that's about it. They both have auto-secondaries. They both don't have an awful lot of armor. The Yoshino gets a couple extra hit points and is very comparable in terms of maneuverability, which means it's not bad. It could be a lot worse, but it's also not great. The Yoshino gets the exact same guns as the Azuma, only that they're better. They have a better range and they do more damage. The Yoshino gets the same auto-secondaries, which for all intents and purposes are completely useless. However, and here's where the cookie crumbles, here's where the things get weird. The Yoshino does get torpedoes, which is historically completely inaccurate, but she does get 10.8 kilometer range torpedoes, and not just any old torpedoes. These are Japanese 600mm torpedoes. They are fast, they do a crapload of damage, and she's getting 16 of them. And to add insult to injury, the Yoshino also gets better AA than the Azuma. So the Azuma is kind of what the Izumo is to the Yamato. A speed bump. The problem is, unlike the Azuma is a premium ship. You have to pay money to get it. It's not something that you need to grind through to get to the Yamato, which is actually good. You have to actually pay money to keep this ship and keep playing at this tier. And this is sort of where the problems start. Well, let's begin by looking at the setup. Obviously, if the only thing we have are our main guns, because again, the auto-secondaries are for all intents and purposes purely cosmetic, if all we have is our main guns, then we need to make the most of it. So main battery reload it is, because let's be fair, who would ever pick torpedo damage reduction on this thing? You can put the historical camouflage on if you want to add more money to the money that you already spent to get yourself the ship, which gives you more hit points, better range, which is great, better dispersion, which is also great, and torpedo damage reduction, which still nobody cares about whatsoever. You can also make it look a little bit more... these actually don't look terrible. I've seen worse, but you can get the alternate camo, which gives you hit points, range, which is good, but instead of giving you dispersion, it gives you large caliber AA range, which nobody cares about, and torpedo damage reduction, which nobody cares about either. So unless you are positively inclined to just for purely aesthetic reasons to get this camo, don't get it, get the other one. That one is better. So that's what we're going to be sailing with today. Equipment-wise, I am using the main battery mod 2, and I would thoroughly recommend to do that. You said, whoa, Terry, why don't you use the main battery mod 3? Because all we have are these 310mm guns, and while the HE is good, it's not good enough to penetrate battleships. So you're going to have to actually throw as much lead downrange as you possibly can. So that's what we're going with. And even though the base concealment isn't great, I'd still say it's actually not a terrible idea to use the concealment module on this ship, because that allows you to, choose your battles. because that gets the concealment down to 9 kilometers, which isn't great, but it's also for a ship that size. I mean, this thing's honking massive. Not a terrible thing to have. Because the armor isn't great, and enemy battleships, especially of the higher tier variant with very, very big guns, are going to damage pinata the crap out of you. Which brings us to the commander. There's an obvious choice here of skill that you want. It's the Fire Supremacy, because that gives you an additional precise aim and rapid reload. And then 2 more skills that you obviously want. It's the Marksman skill, and it's the Master Reloader. And another skill that you obviously want, which is the Exploit Weakness, because fire setting is something that you do. Now, would I go with APCS or IFHE? Probably with APCS, because IFHE most likely isn't going to do an awful lot, but I haven't really tested an awful lot around this field. I think there are not many ships that benefit from IFHE. This may be one of them, but I think the caliber is still going to be weak enough that you're not going to be doing full penetrations against enemy battleships' deck armor with these shells. I don't know, have to test. But the AP is definitely crap, so might be also worth actually buffing that a little bit. So then, Azuma. What can you do with this ship? Well, let's get into some battles, and I'll show you, well, sort of what you cannot do with this ship. The first battle is a tier 10 game, and it's cage center control. We're up against double Colombo, a Minnesota, Worcester, Des Moines, a Black Shima, and a Yugomo. I believe at some point Wargaming has touted these as dangerous for destroyers. I don't see quite how. I mean, yes, you do have sonar, but that's about it. Anyway, I am not going to get into the capture circle. Oh dear, Terry, what are you doing? Why are you loading the armor piercing? Well, because it's actually can be pretty decent against destroyers, and because I've got cruisers to shoot at, and maybe I might be able to pen the Worcester. Let's be completely honest. At this point, I was still testing. I didn't know how crap it was, but it's good for you to see what the armor piercing can and cannot do. So, because these are relatively large caliber guns. So first of all, I'm going to park myself somewhere where I might be able to shoot without being spotted. We do have a Harugumo that is going down the right flank and does some spotting. It looks like the enemy destroyers are not inclined to get into the capture circle just yet. No, there they are. So given that Harugumo is spotting, I'm going to move forward a little bit. And yep, there is a Worcester. So no, Worcester is backing off. So I'm going to get some shots out just to see what happens. And yep, I got 2 hits, and I got actually full penetrations against the Worcester. So yeah, if I'm saying the armor piercing isn't great, it's not great against heavily armored targets. It does struggle to get through a cruiser belt armor at point blank range, but it's not. It can have its uses. So like there's a Des Moines, we can shoot at the Des Moines. Let's see what we can do with the armor piercing. Rapid reload up, shots out. Des Moines goes unspotted. Worcester is unfortunately hidden. We've got Colombos. Nope, that was a miss. So let's see what the armor piercing can do. But this he's moving forward, so I should be able to hit the. I do have to apologize. I do have to look around because I need to pay attention to what's going on around me. There might be a destroyer here somewhere. I am spotted. So and we haven't seen anything. We don't know where the enemy destroyers are. The Harugumo is pushing extremely aggressively into Worcester, but we're holding now. We're losing the cap circle again. So I am trying to do something about the Colombos over there, and I do have to, however, well, as you can see, at least, sorry again that I'm not actually looking, but there's a Worcester, and our Harugumo is about to commit suicide by Worcester. So let's see if I can do something about that thing. Unfortunately, he's stopped, which means the shells are relatively floaty. I am going to push a little bit more forward, but I am still worried about the destroyer sitting around somewhere here. And yeah, it wasn't. There's the Shima. Okay, so Shima smokes, Hydra up. I've still got the AP loaded. See if I can get another salvo off at the Worcester, but now we're going for the HE at close range against Shima. It's okay, but honestly, now I'm starting to get. I'm starting to also come under fire from the left side because there's another destroyer. So now that the Harugumo is dead, they're all coming out of the woodwork here. So Shimakaze at this range, high explosive is the better choice. And I have dodged the torpedoes from the destroyer in the middle. I don't know where the Shima torps are. If there are Shima torps, they should be at some point. But let's see if I can shoot his engine off or something. And then just wiggle the ship, keep the nose. Unfortunately, I'm attracting attention from everywhere now, so I do sort of have to back off here. And try to get myself out of this pickle. Because they don't have anything else to shoot at. There's a lone battle cruiser sitting around in the open. Shima goes undetected. Back to the armor piercing because there is Worcester again. Let's see if we can do something about him. Couple more shots on the blind shot and the Shima. I just hope that Shima hasn't dropped torpedoes. But the Columbos are shooting at me, so I do need to back off. We're holding the capture circle, so it's not that I'm responsible for us not holding the cup or anything. I'm just drawing an awful lot of fire and holding down a Shima here. And freeing up my team to do other things. So yeah, against things like light cruisers, the armor piercing is not a terrible choice. Against everything else, it's not going to do an awful lot. There's that Shima again, and I can't lob that. I don't have the elevation, but I do need to get out of here now because there might be Shima torps in the water, and I am running relatively low on hit points. Shima goes... Ah, dang it. He goes undetected behind the island. So well, he can stay there. We're holding the capture circle. As long as he doesn't come out, I'm calling that a win. Worcester is behind the island. Des Moines. Let's see if we can do something about that guy. Shots out. But I think he might be in the turn. And that wasn't terrible, but could have been better, given that these are 310mm guns. Okay, so Worcester dead. There comes the Black Shima. Okay, we'll get ready to go back into high explosive. Shots out with the armor piercing. Shima smokes up. Everything has missed. And let's see if we can bait him to drop torpedoes on me here. Let's see what he's doing. He's sitting in his smoke screen. Oh, there he is. He's reversing. I don't know if he has angles. Okay, there comes Yugumo as well. What is he doing? I am really not sure. He's reversing slowly while being out in the open. Torpedoes? Shima, surely you have torpedoes, right? If I can hit you, that will be the end. Oh, he's dropping the capture. He's trying to farm the battleships. Well, that's going to be the last thing you do, to be honest. Okay, the Black Iowa takes out Shima. That leaves that Yugumo over there. And a couple of shots out. Let's see, he's turning, I think. So, shot straight. Let's see if... Tulsa takes him out as well. And that just leaves one of the other ships. So... This has been a bit of a weird battle, but I think it kind of shows you, what you can do and can't do with the armor piercing shells. And honestly, I should have been dead 3 times over. If anybody from the battleship line would have been just 1 or 2 salvos from a Colombo, I would have been dead if they had the armor piercing loaded. And some torpedoes. I really don't know where Shima was not firing these torpedoes at me. Maybe he thought, well, it's a cruiser, I'm never going to hit it anyway. But, anyway. It's extremely average in terms of what you can actually do with this thing. And in this game, we are top tier. We are playing Hourglass. Yes, everybody's been complaining about Hourglass on the Saturday video last week. I actually like this map. But let's see how this goes. We're playing against Enterprise, Izumo, Kansas, and Fletcher, and double cargo. So plenty of destroyers, which we are somewhat equipped to deal with. But unless you have the rapid reload ready and the destroyer is giving you flat broadside at close range, it's actually reasonably difficult to hit them. Especially if you need to go nose in and you only have 6 guns ready. Okay, so we're spawning on the right side. Which gives me a nice opportunity to use that island here. We're going to be checking, it's an Iowa, and positioning ourselves next to that island. Why don't I hate this map? Because of because of these islands over there. They're actually quite useful in that you can shoot over them, and at the same time they provide torpedo protection from the center. They allow you to dominate at least this half of the map with relative impunity. So if you've got anything coming down the flank, you've got an island to use as cover. If you've got anything in the middle, you've got an island to use as cover. These islands are very useful, and I think often somewhat underrated. There is Fletcher has been spotted. There's the carrier. That's a bot Amagi. So let's see if we can get some shots off. I might be a little close to shoot over the island, but I can still shoot around the island. Okay, where are you going, bot? I should find myself something more useful to shoot at, hopefully soon, but... okay, bot has dodged. Like that Kansas over there. Okay, so rapid reload up. Kansas fully broadside, 11 kilometers. Shooting at me, obviously. So we're already in reverse. And shots out. And that's a fire. And is he Damaconing the fire? No. But it's also not doing an awful lot of damage. And see, this is the problem with these 310mm intermediate sort of caliber. Like from a heavy cruiser, I wouldn't expect to do an awful lot of damage with the armor piercing at this range either. With a light cruiser, neither. But with a light cruiser, I'd have the rate of fire to do something. Now he's Damaconed, and yeah, I am doing some damage, but it's not an awful lot with the high explosive against enemy battleships. I have to keep an eye on the middle. I could try to use the armor piercing, but like I said, the armor piercing isn't great either. And there come some shots in, just have to dodge that incoming shell fire from the Kansas. There is, I think that was a bot battleship, so I'm not going to bother with it. Got a couple full pens at extreme range, which is promising. We do have eyes on the Enterprise over there, but he is behind that island now. That island shields him from anything incoming from the front. It does not necessarily... Oh yeah, bot insta double fire. It does not necessarily shield him from... from me if I can get a little closer. But we need to get that Kansas out of the way first. So let's try to set him on fire again. And see if we can do anything about the Kansas. And that'll be one fire. Okay, I'll take it. He Damacons? No, he doesn't. Doesn't Damacon. Lets the fire burn. Good. Always like it when people learn. And can I get another fire? Maybe... Ow. Maybe... No? Okay. There is a Fletcher coming through. Up there's another fire. Good, good. But there's a Fletcher coming through. Let's see if I can swing the guns around. Unfortunately, the turrets rotate extremely quickly, so I'm full steam ahead. And they are breaking through in the middle, so hopefully our carrier is paying attention. That Kagero is on extremely low hit points and is spotted for some reason. He's going to go unspotted in a sec, but not if I have anything to say about that. Looks like the carrier's got this with the Fletcher. Well done, carrier. Kagero dead. Do I need to help you? I think you've got this. Yeah, okay, the Veneto has been paying attention, and the Veneto is actually better at dealing with destroyers than I am, so... Back to the Kansas. Okay, I'm not in range, so let's try to do some damage again. The Iowa, meanwhile, has, while I was distracted with the destroyer, has forged ahead, and I'm going to give him some fire support and see if I can help him out with the Kansas. But unfortunately now I'm at the edge of my range, and the dispersion is not the greatest. There, however, is the enemy Enterprise, still in the same spot where he was sitting earlier. I wonder. 12 kilometers. Let's try the high explosive first, and then let's try the armor piercing and see if that does anything. So, armor piercing. Over to the armor piercing. Rapid reload a little bit early. Now, Enterprise goes undetected, but he's not moving. He's probably busy controlling his fighters. I understand that. Armor piercing out. He's spotted again by enemy fighters, so now I am actually having angles at that thing. But the armor piercing does only semi-pens against an Enterprise at 11 kilometers. So another shot out with the armor piercing. Can we do better this way around? Not really, mostly semi-pens. The Kansas has other problems, so I think I'm going to have to switch back to the high explosive here, because the armor piercing just isn't doing anything. Unless you're at point blank range. Yeah, the armor piercing isn't doing anything. You're better off firing high explosive and trying to get some fire set. Our Iowa is chasing the Kansas around. And I can help him in a sec, but I have a chance here to eliminate the enemy carrier. Yep, there he goes. Do I have range at the Azuma? Not quite. Do you need help with the Kansas? Nah, you got this. Alright. Iowa takes out the Kansas with the secondaries. And Izumo is too far away for me to shoot at. So, while we are waiting for this battle to conclude, Azuma, is that a good ship? No. The guns are okay. They can be fun. The problem is you have no torpedoes, and that is really, really hurting your utility. The Yoshino is... I haven't played the Yoshino in forever, but I think I did a review on it and it wasn't actually terrible because of the torpedoes. These 310mm guns are really nothing to phone home about. and you don't have the range to really play like back row snipey sort of games, and you just don't do enough damage with them. That's kind of the main problem. They're too slow on the reload to be useful as HE spammers. You can do a bit of fire damage occasionally, but you know, it's not an awful lot necessarily, and you have nothing else. You have absolutely nothing else. So if you're interested in playing a Super A class battle cruiser, Japanese battle cruiser, Yoshino, probably. Again, it's been ages. I can't even remember, but I think that thing wasn't terrible. Azuma itself, no. You're not going to do an awful lot in this ship. And for a tier 9 premium, I think I would recommend to stay away from this ship. Anyway, there we go. That's what she can do and can't do. And that's it for me today. Thanks, everybody. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.